Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever had that feeling, like you're just going with the flow maybe, accepting things as normal, but without really knowing why they're normal?
Yeah.
Or perhaps you've wondered, how does truth actually get decided? Who decides it? Or even, how can you genuinely be yourself in a world that seems, well, full of expectations about who you should be?
Those are really big questions, aren't they? We all grapple with that stuff.
Absolutely. And especially now, with so much information coming at us, finding any kind of clarity can feel, honestly, pretty challenging.
It really can.
So today, we're diving deep. We're getting into the philosophy of Michel Foucault, powerful stuff. Sometimes a bit challenging, yeah, but incredibly relevant.
Hugely relevant.
For this exploration, we're drawing on some really insightful material that looks at Foucault's wisdom for today, thinking about power, identity, truth,
Right.
all those big themes. And our mission here, really, is to pull out the practical, actionable bits from what can seem like very complex ideas. We want to help you, our listener, examine power, identity, knowledge, in a way that feels, tangible, useful in your actual life.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how Foucault's ideas, which often get stuck in, academic circles, right? They can actually offer really concrete tools for navigating just how complex modern life is. He wasn't just observing, he was really dissecting the hidden mechanics behind how our realities get shaped.
Hidden mechanics, I like that.
Yeah. So we're going to try and connect the dots, link his insights to your everyday experience, because these concepts, they're playing out all around you right now, often in ways you might not even notice.
And that's the real benefit for you listening. We're aiming to cut through some of that, let's say, theoretical density to give you practical ways his thinking can actually, illuminate your life starting right now. Hopefully you'll get a shortcut to understanding these deep ideas, have a few aha moments maybe.
Yeah, those moments are great.
And feel genuinely well-informed without getting totally overwhelmed. Prepare to see things through, well, a powerful new lens.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with probably his most foundational concept, power. Now, when we hear power, we instinctively think of, well, the obvious stuff, right?
Governments, presidents.
Exactly. Laws, police, maybe your boss at work. It's usually seen as something someone has over someone else, a top-down thing. But Foucault just completely turns that idea on its head, doesn't he? He paints a much more intricate, maybe even unsettling picture.
He absolutely does. His core idea really is that power isn't just that top-down command from one central place. It's not only about stopping you from doing things like a king saying, don't do that.
Okay.
Instead, he argues power is diffused. It's basically everywhere. It's woven into the very fabric of society itself, like an invisible web almost.
A web. Okay.
Yeah, and it's present in places that seem quite benign, places we interact with constantly. Think about schools, hospitals, even families, the workplace.
Okay.
And even the language we use. These are all places where power operates all the time, shaping us in ways that are subtle but really profound.
That's such a challenging thought, because it means power isn't just someone bossing you around.
No.
It's fundamentally about shaping what you even think is normal.
Yeah.
Or acceptable, or even what you want.
Exactly. It's less about force, more about shaping desire, shaping norms.
And you mentioned it's not just repressive.
That's a key insight. It challenges that traditional view of power as only stopping us, repressing us. Foucault shows it's actually productive.
Productive. How so?
Well, it actively shapes and produces things. It produces what we see as normal behavior, acceptable ways to be, even identities that make sense to us.
Right.
Think about a school. Through its whole system, the curriculum, grading, rules, even just how the classroom is laid out, it produces a certain kind of student. It doesn't just stop them misbehaving. It actively guides them towards being, well-behaved, knowledgeable, fitting in.
Okay, I get that.
And the same goes for hospitals defining health and sickness, or families instilling specific values from day one. It shapes how we think and feel before we're even really aware of it.
So it's like this sort of soft control woven into our daily lives, guiding our choices without us always clocking it.
Exactly. And that leads us straight into how we can use this today, recognizing subtle control. Think about surveillance now.
Right. Not just government spies.
No, not just that, though that's part of it. Think about digital tracking. Every click, every search, every like.
Oh, yeah?
It's not just random data. It builds these complex profiles, and those profiles then influence what ads you see, what news pops up first in your feed, maybe even if you get approved for a loan.
Wow.
Your choices on, say, a streaming site, they're constantly being nudged by algorithms designed to keep you hooked, normalizing certain shows or movies. You don't even realize how much your free choice is being channeled.
Or even CCTV. Right. Cameras everywhere. You might not be doing anything wrong, but just knowing you could be watched changes how you act.
Precisely. You might walk differently, talk differently, just because of that possibility of being observed, even by someone you can't see. It's self-regulation.
And what about bureaucracy? All those forms and regulations.
Absolutely. Bureaucracy, the endless forms, the complex rules, all the hoops you jump through for basic stuff.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It is. And it's not just about being efficient. These processes standardize how we behave. They put us in boxes. They subtly limit our options. They can make you feel like just a number, right? Without you realizing how much your path is being shaped by just the paperwork.
And it's not just the formal systems, is it? It's those unwritten rules, the social norms that really get you.
Oh, completely. Think about how deeply ingrained those unspoken social norms are. Like expectations around careers. You have to go to college, get a certain job, climb the ladder.
Or get married, have kids.
That's right. The idealized family structure, or even just the 9-to-5 workday. These things define what's seen as successful or normal or proper, and if you deviate...
You feel weird or judged.
Exactly. You feel abnormal, irresponsible, maybe even wrong. That pressure shapes what we aim for, often without anyone ever saying this is a rule. We internalize it. We police ourselves.
Okay, so this sounds a bit depressing. How does Foucault actually help us deal with all this? Does he give us tools?
He definitely does. The first tool is just this awareness. It empowers us to question authority, and not just the obvious kind.
So not just blindly accepting things.
Right. Don't just accept what's presented as normal or natural. It prompts that crucial question: who benefits from this norm?
Ah, okay.
So when you see, say, a social media trend taking off or a particular story dominating the news, Foucault encourages you to ask, whose interests are being served here? Is it selling something, pushing a political view, maintaining a status quo that helps a certain group?
It's like critical thinking on steroids.
Kind of. It encourages that deep skepticism about where information comes from and why it's being spread.
And this isn't just like an academic exercise. It has real-world uses.
Absolutely. Applying Foucault helps us resist systems we see as oppressive. Think about political movements challenging power structures.
Like fighting for data privacy against big tech companies.
Exactly. Or pushing for reforms in policing that question the authority to surveil certain communities.
No.
Or think about patients in healthcare questioning doctors, demanding different treatments.
Right, not just accepting the standard approach.
Or students pushing back against standardized tests in schools, wanting more creativity. Or even people challenging rigid hierarchies in their workplaces. In all these cases, Foucault's ideas help us see those invisible power lines and figure out where to push back for real change.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Once you start seeing power, not just in, the government buildings, but in your everyday chats, your social media feed, the pressures at work, it's like putting on new glasses, isn't it?
It really is. A new lens clicks into place.
You suddenly notice the algorithms feeding you certain news, shaping your view. Or that pressure to fit into a specific professional box where your job title defines everything, and being too individual is risky. It's genuinely eye-opening.
Yeah, it can feel like gaining a superpower almost. But it also brings up a really important point.
Which is?
Well, if power is everywhere, how do we tell the difference between, say, necessary structures, the rules that let society function, keep people safe, and undue influence, the kind that limits freedom or serves only a few?
That's a tricky one.
It is. Foucault doesn't give us like a simple checklist, but he gives us the critical tools to ask that question. And just asking, just discerning, is the vital first step to spotting and resisting that undue influence. It's about developing that internal compass.
And the personal impact of all this awareness.
It's huge. You gain this increased awareness. You get better at spotting manipulation or subtle control, personally and professionally.
Which must feel empowering.
Totally. You feel better equipped to resist those influences. You start making more conscious choices, decisions that actually line up with your values, not just the default path. It leads to a much greater sense of autonomy.
Taking back some control.
Exactly. Understanding why you're making choices, not just drifting along.
Okay, let's shift slightly to another huge idea. The link between knowledge and power. We tend to think of truth as, well, objective, right? Something out there to be found.
Like a scientific fact or a historical event, yeah.
But Foucault really messes with that idea too, doesn't he? Suggests it's way more complicated.
He really does. His insight is that what we accept as truth isn't just floating out there, pure and objective. It's actually deeply tangled up with who holds power, who has the authority to define what truth is and then spread that definition.
Wow. Okay. So truth isn't just found, it's often made, produced.
Produced is a good word. Produced within specific power structures. Foucault talked about regimes of truth, these systems that decide what counts as true, what methods we use to find truth, and who gets to be the expert, the one authorized to speak the truth.
So it's not just what is true, but crucially, who gets to decide what's true and maybe why they get to decide.
Precisely. And this means even things like scientific claims, which we see as super objective, aren't immune. Think historically, scientific truths have been used to justify terrible things.
Like racism or sexism.
Exactly. Phrenology, for instance, that bogus 19th century science about skull shapes, was used to prop up racial hierarchies. Or historical accounts, often written by the winners, right? Shaping the story to make themselves look good, often erasing other people's experiences.
Even common sense.
Yeah. Even what seems like obvious common sense can just be the accepted norm because it serves the interests of a dominant group or ideology. It guides how we think without us even realizing it's just one perspective.
This sounds like it's pushing us to be, well, really skeptical about everything we hear or read.
Well, it's maybe less about pure skepticism and more about cultivating really sharp media literacy and critical thinking.
Okay.
Foucault's ideas encourage that vital practice, always asking who benefits from this information being spread, especially today when we're drowning in information.
Right.
Think about a big news story. How is it framed? Does it make you feel scared, angry, complacent? Who gains if you feel that way? What stories get repeated endlessly on certain channels or hashtags, and whose agenda might that serve?
Like during a health crisis, different solutions get pushed.
Perfect example. Some narratives focus on individual responsibility, others on government action. Foucault pushes us to ask, who benefits most from each of those becoming the dominant truth?
It feels like pulling back a curtain, seeing the machinery behind the information.
It is, and it applies powerfully to those big social narratives that shape our lives, like beauty standards. Who defines what's beautiful?
Usually industries that make money off insecurity, fashion, cosmetics.
Exactly. They create these narrow, often impossible ideals, which encourages constant buying and self-monitoring. Or think about crime. Who decides what's a crime, and who gets labeled a criminal?
Those definitions change, don't they? And often hit certain groups harder.
They absolutely do. Power structures shape those definitions, often criminalizing some behaviors while ignoring systemic harms done by others. Look at the history of drug laws in many places, often used to control specific groups, not just based on objective harm.
Or even something deeply personal, like mental illness.
Definitely. Who gets to categorize and diagnose? What are the effects of those labels? Historically, think about hysteria being used to dismiss women.
Right.
Today, while diagnosis helps people get treatment, which is vital, it can also risk pathologizing normal human differences or reactions to difficult situations. And, pharmaceutical companies sometimes play a big role in shaping what gets defined as a disorder. Foucault urges us to question, are these categories purely objective, or do they also serve to manage people and reinforce norms?
So, if truth is so often tangled up with power, what do? Just give up? Or does it point towards needing other voices?
It absolutely points towards needing other voices. Encouraging alternative perspectives, validating knowledge that's often ignored or silenced by the dominant narratives. That's crucial.
Like citizen journalism, people reporting outside the mainstream.
Exactly. People bypassing the usual gatekeepers, giving different perspectives, or think about open source intelligence groups trying to verify information outside of state or corporate control. These are attempts to create alternative truths that challenge the mainstream. And if we zoom out a bit, recognizing that truth is constructed isn't about saying anything goes, total relativism.
Right, it's not saying facts don't matter.
No, it's about intellectual honesty. It's being aware that every piece of information, every truth claim comes from somewhere and serves some interest. It's about seeing the power dynamics shaping our collective understanding.
And that awareness lets you engage more critically.
Exactly. You make more informed decisions. You actively participate in figuring out what's true for you instead of just passively soaking it all up.
The personal impact of that feels huge, moving from being a passive receiver to an active questioner.
It is transformative. You build that stronger ability to evaluate information, spot biases, form your own judgments. You become, in a way, a detective of meaning, sifting through everything to build your own informed view. That's incredibly empowering in this information age.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about something from Foucault's later work, which sounds maybe a bit softer, but is actually really profound. The care of the self.
Yeah. It sounds like a self-help title, but it's much deeper philosophically.
Right.
So later in his career, Foucault shifted focus a bit. He argued that ethics, how we live a good life, isn't just about following external rules, laws, religious codes, societal expectations.
Okay, not just obeying the rules.
No.
Yeah.
Instead, he saw it as this dynamic, ongoing process. It's about cultivating a relationship with yourself. He called it a practice of freedom.
A practice of freedom. I like that.
Yeah, it's not about conforming to what society wants. It's about actively shaping who you want to be for yourself based on your own internal principles.
So it's less about being good, according to someone else's checklist, and more about actively creating your own ethical framework.
Precisely. It involves active self-creation, self-mastery, but not to fit in. It's for genuine autonomy, genuine flourishing. It's about consciously deciding what kind of person do I want to become.
That feels like a lifelong project.
It is a continuous effort where you're the artist, sculpting your own existence. It goes way beyond just following rules. It requires an internal compass built through looking inward, through consistent practice, through really knowing yourself.
Wow.
Cultivating virtues that let you live aligned with your deepest values.
This seems really relevant today, especially with all the talk about authenticity and personal growth, but maybe deeper than the usual stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It directly encourages that deep self-reflection, building a personal moral code that comes from inside, not just imposed from outside.
Asking yourself tough questions.
Yeah, like, what values truly matter to me, regardless of what I've been told I should value? Or what kind of character am I actively trying to build day by day?
Okay.
And this really supports mental health, doesn't it? Prioritizing living authentically, aligned with your own values, even if that means going against the grain, against societal expectations for your career or relationships or lifestyle.
That takes courage.
It does, but it can reduce that internal conflict we feel when we're trying to be someone we're not.
And you mentioned self-help earlier. This sounds like it completely reframes self-care.
It totally does. It pulls the idea of self-care away from just, consumerism, buying stuff, spa days, quick fixes.
The bubble baths and face masks.
Right. Those things can be nice, but this is deeper. Foucauldian self-care isn't about indulgence. It's about rigorous self-knowledge, understanding your own motivations, desires, biases. It's about self-discipline, not as punishment, but as a tool to consistently choose what aligns with the self you're trying to build.
And mindfulness.
And mindful living, yeah. A conscious, engaged, reflective way of being in the world. It's a path to freedom because you're actively constructing a self that's resilient, autonomous, authentically yours, not just shaped by trends and pressures.
So what does this mean for you, listening? It means your self-care routine could actually be this radical act of self-definition.
Much more than just a bubble bath.
Right. It could be setting aside time to journal every day, really digging into your thoughts, or learning to set firm boundaries to protect your energy, or practicing mindfulness to find calm amidst the chaos. These are active choices.
Acts of building the self you want to be. Authorship over your own life.
And the personal impact.
It's incredibly liberating. You commit more deeply to living consciously, ethically, making choices that align with you, taking responsibility for your own ethical path. It gives you this profound sense of freedom that comes from living by your own principles, not just following the herd.
Building that resilience from the inside out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's tackle another powerful Foucauldian idea. Resisting labels and fixed identities. We live in a world that just loves putting people in boxes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Categorizing, diagnosing, defining.
Foucault really challenges the whole basis of these labels, doesn't he?
He does, quite radically. His argument is that these identities, whether it's criminal, sane, deviant, or even labels based on gender or sexuality, they aren't natural states we're just born with.
Okay, so they're not inherent.
No. He argues they are powerful social constructs. They're tools used by institutions, by dominant ways of talking, to categorize people, control them, normalize them. often for managing populations.
Like hysteria being used historically against women.
Exactly. That label wasn't just a description. It was a tool to control women who didn't fit the expected mold.
So these labels aren't just neutral descriptions. They're tools of power.
Precisely. They often serve to manage people and reinforce existing power structures, and sometimes they lead to real harm, marginalization, exclusion. Think about historical terms for intellectual disability. They weren't just words, they were categories used to lock people up and deny them rights.
And the label criminal.
Right. That's not universal. It's defined by specific laws and norms that change and often target certain communities unfairly while ignoring harm done elsewhere. The history of drug laws, again, shows how criminal can be a label used to control populations.
This seems incredibly relevant to modern movements for liberation and inclusion.
It's directly applicable. Foucault's ideas give ammunition to contemporary movements, gender, racial, neurodivergent, LGBTQ+ liberation. By showing how labels are constructed and imposed, these movements highlight that challenging those limiting or pathologizing labels is key to their fight for equality.
Like the fight for trans rights, challenging fixed gender binaries.
Exactly. Asserting the right to self-define outside of imposed categories. Or the neurodiversity movement, arguing that conditions like autism or ADHD are natural variations, not defects needing to be cured into a narrow normal.
And it encourages a more fluid view of ourselves.
Yes. It promotes the idea that identity can be fluid, multifaceted. That's huge for reducing stigma. If things like gender or sexuality or mental states aren't rigidly fixed, there's more room for individual expression, for change, less pressure to conform. It allows for a richer human experience.
Which should help us build more inclusive communities, right?
That's the goal. It emphasizes building communities that see the complexity in people, not just the labels. It informs things like intersectionality, understanding that someone's identity is made up of many overlapping parts.
Like race, gender, class, ability.
Right. And each combination creates a unique experience. It's about seeing the whole person beyond the category society slaps on them, creating spaces where all parts of someone are welcome.
But wait, if we ditch all the labels, if everything is fluid, how do we connect? How do we find common ground?
That's a really important question. Foucault isn't suggesting total chaos. Actually, by breaking down these externally imposed categories, it might open up space for more authentic connections. Connections based on shared values, interests, real understanding, not just on being put in the same box by society. So freeing ourselves from labels might paradoxically lead to deeper connections.
Based on respect for individuality.
Precisely.
And the personal impact, again, feels really significant.
Immense. You gain this profound freedom to define who you are beyond the labels society throws at you, your job, your diagnosis, your demographic. You're complex, you're evolving. You have the power to write your own story.
Leading to more self-acceptance.
And acceptance of others. Fostering a more compassionate world where difference isn't a deficit, it's just difference. Richness.
Okay, finally, let's look at Foucault's sharp critique of institutions. He spent a lot of time studying places like prisons, hospitals, schools.
Meticulously studying them.
And what he found about their real purpose is, well, illuminating and maybe a bit disturbing.
It can be. His studies revealed that these institutions, prisons, asylums, schools, hospitals, their purpose goes way beyond just containing people or treating them or educating them.
There's something else going on.
He argued they are fundamentally designed to create and enforce normal behaviors and identities. They don't just deal with people who deviate, they actively produce individuals who conform.
So a prison isn't just about punishing crime. And a school isn't just about learning maths.
That's a key part of his analysis. These places use specific techniques, discipline, normalization, to produce obedient citizens, productive workers, sane individuals. Think about school routines, strict schedules, constant grading and ranking, teacher surveillance, even the classroom layout.
Designed for control.
Exactly. These are all disciplinary techniques aimed at creating a compliant, standardized person ready for society's roles. Or hospitals' diagnosis and treatment protocols normalize certain ways of being, pathologize others, define what's healthy.
And sometimes, in trying to help or normalize, they actually cause harm.
Often, yes. By stripping away individuality, enforcing a normal that doesn't fit everyone, or creating categories that stigmatize. Foucault's famous idea of the panopticon prison, where one guard could see everyone, so inmates police themselves, is a metaphor for how society's institutions create this internalized self-discipline through the constant possibility of being watched or judged.
This framework seems incredibly useful for understanding reform movements today.
It provides a really powerful lens. Foucault's insights apply directly to efforts in criminal justice reform, mental health system changes, education reform. It helps us see beyond the institution's stated mission to its actual effects.
So prison reform isn't just about crime rates, but about how prisons might actually create more problems.
Right. How they shape identity, maybe foster recidivism instead of rehabilitation. Similarly, it calls for alternative education models challenge the factory-like standardization of traditional schools. And in mental health, the push for community care and destigmatization directly challenges historical institutionalization.
It gives us a way to understand the deep systemic problems.
Exactly. A theoretical framework to understand systemic inequality and control. It fuels activism aimed at dismantling oppressive structures, not just tweaking them. It helps us move beyond blaming individuals.
Bad student, criminal, mentally ill.
And instead address the problems baked into the system's design. Recognizing that the system itself, in its effort to control, might create or worsen the problems it claims to fix. It's about examining the architecture of power.
Okay, this is where it really clicks. Once you see those underlying mechanisms, how institutions subtly shape us through routine and structure, not just rules, it empowers you to push for real change, right? Not just Band-Aids.
Absolutely. You can identify root causes within the structure itself. That's a huge step towards building something genuinely better.
And the personal impact.
It gives you the theoretical backing, maybe the courage, to advocate for systemic change, to challenge stigma, to work towards reimagining how society treats people. It moves beyond just individual kindness towards collective action for a more humane world. You gain tools to envision and work towards better structures that foster autonomy, not just conformity.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground today, taking these sometimes quite complex ideas from Foucault and hopefully making them feel tangible, connecting them to your life.
Yeah, if we connect it all, Foucault's real genius, I think, is giving us this toolkit. A toolkit for radical self-awareness, yes, but also for societal critique. He helps us see the world not as fixed, but as this dynamic play of power, knowledge, identity, things we can and probably should question and reshape.
He gives us the scaffolding for being engaged citizens and self-aware people.
Exactly.
So let's do a quick recap of these big ideas and how they can empower you. First, power is everywhere. Remembering this helps you recognize and resist those subtle controls algorithms, social pressures shaping your choices daily. You spot the invisible threads.
Second, knowledge is constructed. Grasping this lets you question the truths you're told. Develop that media literacy, ask who benefits. Move from passive receiver to active evaluator.
Third, ethics as care of the self. This reframes ethics as actively cultivating your authentic self, living by your own reflected values, not just external rules. It's about conscious self-authorship.
Fourth, identity is fluid. This empowers you to embrace your complexity, reject harmful labels, gives you the freedom to define yourself, fostering self-acceptance and acceptance of others.
And finally, institutional critique. Understanding how institutions shape normal gives you the framework and courage to advocate for fairer, more humane systems, pushing for real, systemic change. So you really do leave this deep dive with a powerful framework, a way to navigate this complex world, making you not just well-informed, but hopefully truly empowered.
These insights don't just explain things, they equip you to engage more consciously, make more autonomous choices, and be a more effective advocate for yourself and for a better society.
Yeah.
Which does raise a final, maybe provocative question for us all to think about. In this world where truth and normalcy are constantly being defined for us, often by powerful forces, what new forms of resistance, what new ways of creating ourselves and connecting with each other might emerge as we get better at using this Foucauldian lens?
That's a great question to ponder.
Will it be more individual acts of self-care and ethical living, or bigger collective movements challenging the structures themselves? Or both?
Yeah.
Possibilities are huge.
So we definitely invite you, after this deep dive, to look at your world a bit differently. Where do you see these subtle powers playing out in your job, your community, your online life? And how might you start practicing that deeper care of the self? Or maybe challenge a label that just doesn't fit you anymore. Foucault's ideas aren't just for academics in ivory towers.
Not at all.
They are genuinely powerful tools for living a more conscious, more autonomous, and ultimately maybe a freer life.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Foucault's wisdom. We look forward to exploring more fascinating topics with you next time on The Deep Dive.